stories. When I was 18, I was living in a small town. I was friends with the ratty skaters around, and they helped connect with this dude who sold weed. He was 29 at the time and gave me pretty good deals and lived nearby. I wasn't driving at the time, so this was convenient for me. His name was Max. Max has always struck me as a weird dude, but I honestly quite liked his weirdness. Not in a romantic way or anything, but I liked weird people. We had normal weed buying interactions that never lasted more than 10 minutes. Buy some weed, maybe smoke a bowl, that's it. He'd often tell me he could drop it off at my house, but I never let him because, as I said before, he was weird. I wasn't afraid of him, but was definitely aware that he and his offers to deliver were weird. One day, in May 2018, I was invited to a bonfire by the same ratty skaters that introduced me to this guy. I had no idea he'd be there, nor was it important to me at all. I brought the guy I was dating at the time. I said hey to everyone, including Max. We stayed for a couple hours, and some of us played some music on their guitars. Nearing the time I was leaving the bonfire around 11 p.m., Max was getting upset about something and threw his guitar into the bonfire. I didn't know what he was angry or upset about and paid no mind to it. This happened as I was leaving with the guy I was dating. I went to bed and woke up to paragraphs on paragraphs of crazy text from Max, ranging from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., like a constant stream of text stating things such as, "You know how much I loved you. You're a cruel cunt. How could you go back and forth between saying I would give you the world if you'd let me, and you really deserve him though." He said really scary things like, "You are a predator and you should be snubbed out. Just wait." And "You are stuck. I will either love you or hate you to the fullest extent of my powers. Behold, right now, I pay the worst death on you, that fuckboy bitch." To top it all off, he said, "Losing you is like losing a mother to me," and told me to tell him I never loved him and that I wouldn't hear from him again if I did. So that's what I did. I said, "I never loved you. Do not message me again." And I left it at that. I didn't get a response, nor did I care to get one. Max had never expressed any romantic interests, never asked me out or anything. This was all out of nowhere, and he was 11 years older than me. I was barely 18. That night, he cut his long hair off and posted photos naked on Facebook, curled up in a fetal position, talking about being a statue of shame. It's as if he had had a breakdown, but I had no intention of causing that. I did not think that I would even offend anyone by bringing the guy I was seeing, and everyone else seemed to like the guy I'd brought. About a week later, Max texted me pretty late at night and asked if I had seen the flowers he spread across my sidewalk, saying that he stole every flower in the vicinity of my neighborhood that night. I asked how he knew where I lived, and I said I haven't seen the flowers, so he must have had the wrong house. I also told him that he shouldn't be doing things like that. I never felt anything for him, and so on. He told me that he had heard I lived on the same block as another one of the skater guys who were both friends with him, and he wasn't wrong. The skater guy that I lived by was on the other side of the block, and I never walked that way, so I never saw the flowers. I blocked his number and didn't hear from him again for weeks. Weeks later, I woke up after a rough night, and there was loads of flowers on the sidewalk right outside my house, along with the little banquet at the top of my walkway. I was pissed. I wasn't scared yet, and stupidly, I unblocked his number and texted him asking why the fuck there were flowers outside of my house. This confirmed that this indeed was where I lived. I still, to this day, feel so stupid for texting him and making it known that after weeks he had found my house. He responded saying, sounds nice. This was me. I bitched him out basically and blocked his number again. About a week later, I was out of town and my roommate texted me a photo of a heart with a peace sign inside of it and my name written under it, drawn in chalk outside my house. When I got back into town, I went to the courthouse and began the process of getting a stalking order against him. When I left the courthouse, I went to Max's work and told him he needed to stop this behavior, that he was stalking me. He looked me in the eyes with no facial expression and said, "If you do not leave, I am calling the cops." I got angry and said loudly, "Call the fucking cops! I was just talking to them about you!" and left his work in a rage. Soon after this, I began driving again. I once drove by him and he noticed it was me. The next day, I woke up with my car covered in flowers. I presented my case to the judge and she put the stalking order in place. He was served with it by police officers, and I thought that was that, and he wouldn't be bothering me again. I was wrong. After the stalking order was served, he made several other chalk messages on my sidewalk, left random gifts for me like chalk, and beheaded my little pony heads on beer bottles. I always brought these things to the police station, but they said I needed to catch him doing it, take a photo, and get security cameras. So I got a security camera and really hoped I would catch him. It turned out my security camera was stupid and I couldn't just watch the videos it took, but had to skip through second by hand. It was an impossible task. I was terrified of leaving my house at night at this point. I never had my curtains open anymore, and I was so frustrated that my livelihood was being taken away from me. Ultimately, I blocked his number in hopes that he would text me directly, violating the stalking order, and after a few days, it worked. He sent me a weird text saying something like, "Forgive me. We are charming. This is harming. Let us try again." By now, it's September 2018, and he finally goes to jail. He is facing up to a year in jail, and has to stay there until our court date. I finally start calming down. I am able to go outside at night, even if just to get in my car. I let myself have my curtains open sometimes. I am starting to feel alive again. Right when I start feeling secure in my small town life again, someone posts bail, and he was released after only 3 months in jail, and I went back to living in fear. We still had court dates coming up, and I was optimistic that he would serve more time for ruining my life for so long. His lawyer kept pushing the court date back to gather evidence, and after about 6 months of pushing it back, the state decided he wouldn't do anything more and closed the case, basically. I had to move out of town 3+ hours away at this point, so he didn't actually have an option to continue this behavior. Living in a new place, I feel safe. I can walk at night and don't have to have my curtains closed all the time. It's been over a year since they decided to close the case. About a month ago, he began responding to my friends' Instagram stories, friends that live here in this small town, telling them how fond he is of me, etc. I have always had him blocked, but my Instagram isn't private, so he must have found them that way. I have since changed my account to private, and he hasn't messaged any more friends of mine. I refuse to be fearful now. The way I was then, he will never find where I live or where I work now. However, my life is forever changed after this experience. I will always be more aware of people and their weird energy. I will always close my curtains early in the evening and make sure all the windows and doors are locked. I will always live in a little bit of fear. Maybe not of him, but of it happening again. He ruined my life for a year, and I truly wish he had gotten that time in jail. He deserves it. So Max, let's not meet again. A couple of years ago, when I was in high school, my friends and I were big into paranormal. We lived in shit-fuck Indiana, so there isn't really a lot going on around here. There were 6 of us, 4 boys and 2 girls, myself and Quinn, Donnie, Chris, Larry, and Steven. There were more to our little clique, but the rest of them didn't want to fuck around in cemeteries at 1 a.m. So, one summer night, I get a text from Donnie asking if Quinn and I wanted to go check out this place around Brazil. Quinn said yeah, so I said yeah, and in the hour, we were all piled into Donnie's truck. Now the truck has enough room for 5 people, 2 front, 3 back, and one of us had to ride in the bed. It's Indiana. We don't give a shit here. We'll die on the highway flying out of a pickup bed. Why not? So we head down to I-70 and pull off into Brazil exit, and Donnie takes us down to this road I don't recognize. We keep going sort of south and then land on this gravel road. The road turns to dirt because Chris didn't want to ride alone in the back. Steven was with him. So it was me and Quinn in the back seat, Larry and Donnie up front, and Chris and Steven out in the back. And they keep sticking their hands through the small sliding windows and poking us in the back of the head like 17-year-old fuckboys do. After maybe 20 minutes, we get to this long, overgrown driveway sort of road. It's gravel, but you can tell it's unkept and never traveled on. We go down it, avoiding a ton of potholes, and finally make it under this railroad bridge. There is a shit ton of graffiti everywhere, and it's just all around not looking good. So I hear Chris and Steven start whispering and stuff about it being spooky. Donnie turns off the truck and says we should get out. Now, all the graffiti was your typical bullshit 14-year-old white boy satanic shit, so I wasn't going to play that game. I'd rather go kick up graveyard dirt than deal with getting my skin flayed by redneck Satanists. So Quinn and I say no, and we said we should go check out 4 Arcs, because that's not far away, a little north of Brazil, I believe. Donnie eventually agrees to it, so he starts backing out of the tunnel. Chris and Steven start screaming, and in the mirror you can see someone standing at the end of the tunnel opening. They start trying to climb through the little pothole-sized window, and Quinn and I are pulling them to help them. And this dude starts Olympic sprinting at the truck, and you can see in the brake lights that he has a machete. So Donnie just floors it in reverse and almost hits that dude. Our windows were down, and you could hear him smash into the wall to avoid us. And he spins us around, and we take off. We never went back there, and I never heard anyone having a good experience there either. Last summer, the 6 of us go out again to this place called Edna Collins Bridge. It's not a super popular place, I guess. I don't know. It's near Clinton Falls and Brick Chapel. Maybe an hour from Crawfordsville. And 20 minutes from Green Castle. We had been to both Brick Chapel and Collins a few times, so it wasn't a big deal to us, just somewhere to fuck around. Now, if you've ever been to a local haunt, I can assume that, like us, teenagers flock there to fuck with people. I've heard stories of people hiding in the bridge and knocking on car windows in the dark, etc. But we had been there multiple times and had never seen anyone do that. Just people parking on the bridge and doing the ritual, turn off car, beep 3 times, wait for spook. So Donnie is driving, Quinn is up front because they're dating, and the 4 of us decide to ride in the bed because the last time we did it, it's not like 2 people almost got killed by a machete or anything. We're going down 36 and pull onto the road that leads to the bridge. We eventually get there and notice there is this blue car pulled off near the bridge. Okay, probably kids. It's parked on the northern side of the bridge after you cross over. So we just roll across the bridge and glance at it. There isn't anyone inside, so we assume they are off fucking around like we plan to be. We go down the road and turn around at the first house, right off the bridge, and pull back through and head back to 36 and go fuck around at Bridge Chapel Cemetery. 2 hours later, it's now fully dark and maybe 10 p.m. We go back and the car is gone and it's empty, so we pull off before the bridge and start walking around it. And looking at the new graffiti, there are flowers in the middle of the bridge, kinda like a bouquet. Donnie picks them up and gives them to Quinn, who throws them into a gap into the woods, into the water. Immediately after that, we hear this splashing noise, like from under the bridge. We all get really quiet, and Larry, being the big fuck that he is, starts yelling and asking what ghosts were there and how ghosts were pussies. Then the splashing gets really loud, and we see the shadow climb out over the guardrail at the end of the bridge. Then another one on the other side. Then thump, some fucking dudes drop out of the rafters right in the middle of us. Quinn screams and I stumble back into Larry, who just picks me up, and Donnie is screaming at the dude who dropped down next to us. The dude starts screaming back about how we were trespassing. We weren't, it's a public road. And he starts screaming how he is going to fucking kill us. In the moonlight, you can see that he is way older than us, probably 40s. He is spitting and frothing at the mouth. Chris immediately says he's a meth head, so we all take off back to the truck, and the three guys chase us. For some reason, Steven thinks, oh, I'm going to get in the bed of the truck, and then flops in, and then so does the skinny meth head, and they start wrestling in the truck, and finally Steven throws him out, and Donnie peels off, and we go home. A few months later, we decided to return. Unlike the last time, there wasn't anyone there, and we went driving the day because the boys were wimps. The area is actually very pretty during the day, so we fucked around and crawled under the bridge. Down there was graffiti, typical, but there was this patch of loose dirt that Larry found. He kicked it and opened it, and inside was a folding knife with some sort of dried stuff on it, probably blood, stained clothing, and 3 different models of cell phones. We never went back. Hello. For context, I'm a 28-year-old blonde woman, and I look around 18 to 22, or so I'm told. I recently went back to college for human resources, so I was on the train at 1 p.m. on a Monday to get to a 3 p.m. class. The train comes from outside the city, and it's super dead during the day when it's not rush hour. I got on the train, I walked upstairs, but decided to go to the middle area. There's a middle area next to a bathroom because someone was humming and I thought it was annoying. The washroom door was closed the whole time. I didn't think anyone was in there. I was alone on the middle area with no one around me. I was sitting with my jacket off, drinking a tea out of my bunny mug with my backpack across from me. Completely comfortable because the GO train is typically a calm ride. A man pops out of the bathroom after 5 minutes of me sitting there. He is around 22 years old. He has white fine line scars in the shape of a heart and a 3D cube on his head. He puts his hands on my backpack. I assume he's going to try to mug me. I think I'm going to punch him in the throat and run because this isn't my first attempted mugging. My body froze because his first words were, I'm going to kill my father tonight, and I'm going to make you help me. He doesn't want my debit card. He wants to hurt me. I currently work in mental health. I'm used to working with people with homicidal thoughts. I don't scare easily when someone says their voices say to kill me because I feel like I have all the resources I need and the rapport with my people. I don't know this man. Immediately, I knew this isn't just thoughts or a case of being lonely and talking to random strangers. He's not seeking help from me. I need to leave, but his leg is blocking me in. It sounds like you're going through a lot right now. I'm sorry to hear you are upset with your dad. Tell me more about it. I grab my backpack. I know I look terrified because I just know this isn't good. He says, "No, you are fucking not. Because women like you fucking sleep with my fucking dad, you fucking bitch." He gets closer and corners me into the seat. He says he's going to make me help him kill his dad with a knife tonight because he's tired of pretty women like me always ignoring him but fucking with his dad, asking me why I do stuff like that. I feel terrified, and I realize that we are 2 feet away from a washroom, and I am scared he's going to try and make me go in there, and my body is just frozen. His face gets closer to mine. I scream at the top of my lungs, "Help me! Help me! Help!" And honestly, I didn't even recognize my voice. I sounded terrified. 4 random train people came running in. 1 man, 2 young women, and 1 middle-aged woman. One of the men asked me if I'm okay. The guy across from me puts his legs down and is screaming, "Oh, help me, I'm a vain woman. We're all vain and cruel, and I want someone pretty, not like him," as he motions to his scars. I bolt upstairs. I couldn't even talk for a minute. My hands were shaking. I have been in some scary situations before, but I was comfortable with my commute, not on guard like I am at work. One of the other men who came to help me sees that he is mad and still yelling. I honestly don't remember what. He tells me to run towards the customer service train, and he'll make sure that he doesn't follow me. We press the yellow security strip before I get up and go, and the train starts beeping, but there was no security to come. The guy who came to help me found me later when the train stopped and told me that he had strolled off the train like nothing had even happened. However, 2 young girls who came to me had their phones and took a lot of pictures of him walking away and gave them to the police. I walked to the customer service train. The police came, but the man was gone. They talked to me for a few minutes and said that they know who he is because the scars on his face and because he did something similar yesterday, and they think that he might be mentally ill. The police officer didn't seem very interested in talking to me. They asked if I saw his knife. I said no, but it doesn't surprise me because he mentioned a knife, and the way he spoke was the confidence of a man with a weapon. They obviously do not care what I think he could have had. They explained that he slapped another woman on the train, and someone saw he had a knife out at some point. And someone had called the cops before we even pressed the emergency strip, but the customer service train guy didn't even know that. He only knew my story because no one else pressed the security strip and came running to him. I just want to say that someone with mental illness can be homicidal, but it's not a symptom of who they are as a person. It's a sign of how unwell they are at the moment. Not all people with mental illness have homicidal thoughts or are violent at all. I know very kind and wonderful people who have homicidal thoughts when they go through life transitions. These people do not scare me. Maybe this man had mental health issues, but this man scared the hell out of me. So I'm glad that the people came running to me when I called, and the young girls took pictures, because my gut tells me he would have done something if I didn't start screaming. I sincerely hope if he had mental health issues that they took him to to a hospital so he's not roaming free. The worst part of this is that I saw a young lady between 18 and 20 years old crying at the train station the next day, and I overheard her saying that she cried and hid in the washroom the entire train ride to the station because a man scared her when she got on the train, and she had to call her parents to pick her up. I have no clue if it was the same guy, but I felt like it was possible, and it bothers me that he's bothering other women, but especially young girls who might be too scared to scream. It's been a few months and the police have never contacted me on if they caught him. He never actually touched me, so I guess it wasn't serious enough for them. It made me permanently anxious on my commute, and I never sit alone or take my jacket off anymore. I'm never really comfortable on the train. Scary man with the heart and box scarred on his face. Let's not meet again. I met this kid in middle school. He was pretty sweet. A generally nice but weird kid. That's fine. Everybody's a bit weird in their own ways. He was a Boy Scout and he knew some weird facts. I gave him the usernames on my YouTube channel, Kick, Snapchat, and some other accounts that I can't remember. He added, followed me on all of those accounts. He tried to flirt and convince me to leave my boyfriend because he was better than him and that he loved me more. I stuck to being his friend all throughout middle school despite our differences. He was also mentally unstable. I didn't think we were going to have classes in high school together. We had one, honors biology. During that class, he continued to flirt with me on the low key and tried to get me to go to his house so he could tutor me as I complained about my grades. I didn't do the work, but I didn't need the tutoring. I just needed to do my work. He was also kinda creepy, and I was counting down the days until sophomore year started. He had even purchased Overwatch for me and told me to play Mercy so that we could be the ultimate support duo and wreck our foes together. I played on PC with him once or twice, but I got sick of it because the computer I played on was shit. We had classes up until I learned he was going to move to a different school. Perfect. Now I wouldn't have to see him again. He signed my yearbook and told me he was going to Brazil. Perfect. Then out of the blue, when summer vacation had just started, he wanted to see me one last time before I would go on to be color guard for another year and have no summer. Plus, with him going to Brazil to visit family, I said, what the hell, why not? We decided to meet up by an abandoned park close to our houses and chat for a bit. I asked my mom, she said sure. She dropped me off for a bit with some money so we could hang out. We head over to the spot we agreed to meet at, and I only have to wait a minute or so before he rides up on his bike. My mom and I get out of the car so she can meet him. So you're the stalker guy that my daughter wanted to meet up with? Yes, ma'am. That's me. Mom, come on. I just wanted to hang out for a bit, like I said. Ah, okay. So what time do you want me to pick her up? 4? 5? Mom, stop. You're embarrassing me. I will call you when I'm ready. Hey, actually, I think I gotta get back home to pack. Nice meeting you, Mrs. Yeah, okay, bye. And like that, he rode away on his bike, fast, my mom and I watching him go. We got into the car, silently, and began to drive home, not a word spoken between us. Once we got home, she grabbed my arm before I went inside and held me by my shoulder. You said you knew that kid, right? From where? Jesus fucking Christ, Mom, I know him from school. Why? Is there something wrong? Mom stared a hole through me for a few seconds, and then she said, "Don't tell your father this, but did you notice how he kept fidgeting and stuttering?" Yeah, he was probably fucking nervous. His shirt had a snake on it, and snakes were known in the Bible for what? Who took on the form of a snake? Oh God, Mom. Yeah, your religion. Satan. And what about it? What did Satan do? Oh God, kill people. He's probably going to try to stab you. What? What? Really? You think that because he has a fucking snake on his shirt that he's gonna try to stab me? Because the Bible says that Satan was a snake? What the fuck is wrong with you? He was fidgeting because he had a weapon. Lord told me not to leave you alone because he had evil intentions. He told you to go to a nearly abandoned park to hang out right by a freeway. He was going to try and murder you and dump your body on the side of the road. Yeah. Okay, Mom, sure. You said he was going to Brazil, right? And moving schools. Cut off contact with him. Never talk to him again. He'll try to harm you or anyone else in our family if he gets the chance. After listening to this stupid bitch, we went outside. I blocked him on every single platform I could have imagined. Somehow, as stupid as my mom is, it all made sense. He was a Boy Scout, making him knowledgeable about all sorts of things. He browsed the internet and loved crime stories, thus giving him all sorts of ideas. He knew and discussed with me multiple times on how to dispose of a body. I was ignorant and stupid. I distanced myself from him, but he messaged me and gave me an ultimatum while in Brazil. Break up with your boyfriend, or I'll throw myself off of a cliff and end my life. I added him and my boyfriend to a group chat and tried to calm him down. He did, for a short while, until it started up again. We decided, fuck it. We blocked his account and thought that was the end of it. He made multiple other accounts and spammed us. We made new Kick accounts with very different usernames and moved on. He followed me on my new Instagram after I posted about it on my old one. He added me on my new Snapchat that I had made sophomore year. I wanted it to be over, so I tried to find the accounts and block them, with no success. He blended right in and was likely catfishing me without me realizing. I became more and more paranoid. I grew scared. I couldn't look or hear a name similar to his without nearly having a mental breakdown. I did not want to trust anyone, and soon after it began to break me down. I took an interest in knives, and once I turned 18, just a couple of months ago, I bought my first one. I feel so much safer with it, and bought an additional 3 along with a beautiful katana because of the fears of being attacked. They are my beautiful children, all good girls and boys. About 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend flew out from the opposite side of the US to come to my prom. We got fancied up, looked nice, and headed out. We got to the venue, and we were waiting for 2 of my friends and one of their boyfriends. When I see him, I paused for a moment before realizing that I'm with my boyfriend in a public space with camera and security guards all around me. One small move, and I'll scream. We make eye contact, but he was more focused on his date, a fellow ex-guard member. My old friend and I chat for a bit, then I ignore him. So, to my stalker who wanted to stab me to death, let's not meet again, and please, don't stab me if you find me. I'm at my parents' house with my mother drinking coffee. I had decided to drop by unexpectedly to spend some time with her since I had worked a lot the weeks before and hadn't heard much from her. So we were talking when the intercom starts ringing. My mother goes to see who it is, picks up the receiver, and the expression on her face changes. She seems stressed, but she opens the door anyway. She then comes back to me saying it's a guy she met on Facebook that she hasn't seen for a year and a half, but we have to say that we are going to my grandma's so he won't stay long. I'm starting to think that it's weird, but we hear knocking, so my mom will open the door while I stay in my chair overlooking the entrance. I see a rather tall man coming in with a normal build, bald with small glasses. As soon as he entered the apartment, I felt the atmosphere change. Something oppressive was squeezing my chest. He kisses my mother and turns his head towards the living room where I am. Then he frowns when he sees me, as if he was surprised to find me here. I don't like it. His gaze is empty and disturbing. He says hello to me from afar and walks into the living room, grabs a chair, and sits down. My mother then asks him what he's doing here and why he arrived without calling first. I'm sorry, I didn't take my phone. Actually, I'm coming from the hospital next door. I escaped, and since you told me you lived around here, I decided to stop by and say hello. At first, I thought he was joking, especially since he said it with a big smile. But his eyes were really weird, and his attitude too. My mother laughed nervously and asked him if he was serious, to which he replied that he was. He even gave us the name of the town he came from and told us how he ran away. He tells us that he was outside with 3 doctors on a terrace, that the doctors came in before him while telling him to follow them, and that he took the opportunity to leave, passing over a hedge that overlooks a road where there is a bus stop. He got on the first passing bus and found himself not far from our house. He didn't know our exact address, but thanks to my mom, who gives her real name on social media networks, he knew his last name, and he searched all the interphones in the neighborhood before finding out where we were. While he was telling this story, I went on Google Maps to check where he said he was coming from, and everything matched. The hedge looking over the road, the back terrace, the bus stop. But most of all, it's not just any hospital he escaped from, it's a psychiatric hospital. So I started to get really scared for myself, but especially for my mother. We have an escapee from a mental hospital in our house. He then explains to my mother that if she hasn't heard from him for a year, it's because he came back there a year and a half ago after he lost his wife and all of his money, but he didn't linger on it for very long. It was way too much for me, so I got up and said I had to go to my room. I went in. The door wasn't closing, but I took my phone and I called my best friend, who is a security guard and who lives 20 minutes away by car. I tell him what's going on, and he decides to come, armed with a knife, just in case. When I hang up the phone and go out of my room, I see the man in the corridor near the door. He tells us that he's going to have to leave because people are probably looking for him, and that he has to go to a friend's house, but he has to take the train. We say goodbye to him, and he leaves, but that's not all. I then explained to my mother what just happened, that she was crazy to have given her name and address, even approximate to a stranger on the internet. And then she tells me that last year she was at his house with my father, that his wife was there, and that they all had a great time, so she didn't consider him dangerous. I still tell her that someone you have only seen once is not someone you can trust. My buddy arrives then, sooner than expected. We decided to call the hospital to make sure what he said was true, and especially to warn them that someone might be missing from their institution. So we call, and the secretary picks up. We explain our story. She seems surprised, so she puts us on hold, and she checks it out. When she comes back, she tells us that he is not in his room anymore, and that all of his stuff is there, and that they hadn't noticed he was gone. It had been more than 2 hours since he had escaped, but since the guards had seen his belongings when they passed by the door, they hadn't worried. She, however, warns us that he is a dangerous psychopath who had a crisis after his wife left him, that he can be extremely violent if he is upset. At that particular moment, I only could think about one thing. What would have happened if I hadn't been there with my mother, if she had been alone with that guy? She told us that they were going to do whatever was necessary. We asked her if we could be kept informed when they found him, but she told us she had no right to give us that kind of information. We then raise our voices and explain that we shouldn't be afraid of him coming back every day, and she apologizes but can't do anything about it. We hang up the phone and decide with my friend to go for a walk around the neighborhood for several hours and the next few days to see if he's still there, but we never saw him again. My friend Joe told me this story a few years ago. Joe was a nurse at one of the hospitals in my area, working an overnight shift at a psychiatric ward. It was late at night, and some of the other staff had brought in a woman who was having a psychiatric break. She wouldn't stop screaming, no matter what they did or said. She also was screaming nonsense, no words, just straight up screaming. So they decided at first to let her kind of just blow off steam. They figured she would stop screaming eventually, so Joe was put on watch duty for her. She was put into an isolated room with a camera in it. He was put in a position where he could see her, but also could see her on the camera footage in case he needed to. When they put her into the room, his peer told him, "She's in there for now. We will check up on her in a while. For the time being, watch over her, but don't look at her. Just don't. It'll make it worse, and it'll just be better if you watch her through the cameras." The woman continued to scream for hours and hours. High-pitched, horrifying screams. He said eventually he noticed that her screams were sounding really messed up and gurgling, which made him decide to look at her through the glass, since it was rather alarming to hear her voice suddenly change like that. He looked over and saw her staring right at him, still screaming, and she had managed to spew blood all over the window on the door because she had been screaming so hard for so long that her throat started bleeding and flakes of blood were flying everywhere. It was like something out of a horror movie, and I can only imagine it was as such. Eventually, they had to sedate the woman because she was starting to shred her vocal cords from the insane amount of screaming. To this day, I still get so spooked thinking about how horrifying that experience must have been, but also horrified that something like that could actually happen. I'm from Scotland, and my workmates took a trip to Newcastle for a friend's hen party. A hen party is the Scottish version of a bachelorette party. We'd went to a few pubs and clubs that night and settled on the Livello nightclub. I have autism, so generally I am not very good with my social skills, but they insisted that I go along with them and that it'd help my confidence. What would happen to me this night would ruin me forever. Unlike other people, I can hear sounds and noises a lot different from other people. My friends were dancing to the loud music. For them, it was fun. For me, it was just white noise to an extreme level, a very high-pitched tone ringing in my ears. I really regretted going out. I just sat there while they danced, and I'd seen this guy from a distance hanging from the balcony. Luckily, some bouncers caught him. When he fell, I was relieved but felt disgusted at the same time that someone could get himself in such a state. He was removed from the nightclub. My anxiety levels had skyrocketed, and I couldn't handle the music anymore. I told my friends that I felt sick and wanted to head back to the hotel. So they tell me to stay safe and phone a taxi, to which I did. I was waiting outside for more than an hour in the pouring rain. No taxi had appeared. I phoned back countless times, but they said the taxi service was busy and it'd take a while to get one to me. The doorman showed me directions to a taxi rank and said I'd get one quicker if I joined the taxi queue. I'd walked down, taking his instructions. It was very dark and rainy at this moment, and eerily quiet. That was until he popped up from an alley, the guy from the balcony. He was pissing in there. He looked like your typical English hooligan, shaved head and topless, and some horrible torn denims, and a beer bottle in hand. I continued walking, and I could sense him following me. "Oi," he said. "Oi, you." I don't know why I did it, but I turned around. "Do you got the time?" I told him the time, put my head down, and kept walking. He tried to catch up with me, staggering a bit because he was drunk. "Where you from?" he asked. "Oi, I'm talking to you. Where you from? You one of them Markhams?" A Macomb is a slang term for someone from Sunderland, Newcastle's sworn rivals in football. I'd said no, I'm Scottish. He'd rambled on some more, but I chose to ignore him. "Oi, listen, I am talking to you." He reached his hand to grab my shoulder and nearly tripped up. I'd laughed a little because I couldn't help it. What the fuck are you laughing at, you Scottish cunt?" he said, reaching for me again. By instincts, I started to run. I just didn't feel comfortable with him there. He started to chase me. "Oi, get back here, you slut!" He kept shouting. My high heels had fell off, and I was running in my bare feet. I couldn't run anymore because I was out of breath and my feet really hurt. I went into a phone box to protect myself from him, and he tried to barge the door in. I'd gripped onto it so hard, putting all my weight onto it. He started ranting at me. "You fucking skank, wait till I get you. I'm gonna teach you a fucking lesson." He started kicking the door, and it almost moved. I was screaming for help, and there were some passers-by, but they ignored my calls for help. He kept kicking at the door and nearly got in. I jammed my fingers, but still held on for my life. I then used my feet to hold it even tighter. He threw his glass bottle at the door, and the booze had spilled everywhere, soaking the whole phone box. I was worried it was going to smash the glass. He'd have definitely got me by then. Hey, you fucking cunt, why don't you go back to Kiltland and eat haggles and whatever shit you people eat? He started mocking the Scottish accent before chanting, England, England, England. I just couldn't stop myself from crying, and I kept screaming for him to leave me alone. I could actually feel my throat get sore. I'd screamed so much. He then pulled out his penis and started rubbing it against the glass and said, I'm going to make you suck this dirty slapper. After another aggressive struggle, he managed to get his hand in and grabbed me, but I'd kicked the door shut against his arm and jammed his fingers. When I kicked it again, he was reeling in agony and had blood pouring out of him. Some passers-by had tried to warn him off, and he pulled out his penknife from his pocket and threatened them with it. He got into a brawl with two guys from the group, and I took the opportunity to run away while his back was turned. I remember my bare feet ended up with glass in them, but I was in so much shock. I just kept running. The rain never stopped pouring. I spent the next hour at the taxi rank, freezing cold. I'd lost my jacket when I ran. I can't remember how I'd ended up without it, but I had blood pouring from my feet. I remember I could see it mixing in with the raindrops on the concrete. The taxi driver asked if I was okay. I shivered constantly with fear as well as the cold, and I couldn't stop crying. I could barely talk, but managed to tell him about my ordeal. He told me to go to the hospital or to the police, but I just wanted to go home at this stage. Had to settle for my hotel room, of course. After a trip to the hospital, I'd gotten 4 stitches in my feet with antibiotics to avoid infection. I'd went back to Scotland the next night without my friends. I was too scared to do anything. I reported him to the police, but nothing ever came of it, and I never heard anything back from them. This happened when I was 16 years old. I was driving home in my new car. It was raining in San Diego County that evening and was dark out. We lived a bit away from the town, houses with bigger yards, no stores really, etc. As we drove past a larger intersection with a gas station and nothing else for a few blocks, I saw a man sitting in a wheelchair on the side of the road, alone, in a hospital gown, in the rain. There was no hospital anywhere close by at all. I froze for a bit and then yelled at my mom to look. At the last second she did, and she saw him too, which thank God, because I would have been sure I had made it up. Again, a man in a wheelchair in the pouring rain. Hair was plastered against his face, in a hospital gown, alone. I still think about it to this day, and if I ever have to go back to that town and drive past that intersection, I get shivers. No hospitals for miles. There weren't any businesses besides the gas station for at least a mile. I'm now 29 years old, and this happened 13 years ago. If you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.